We chose this project because we're wanting to test the temperature and how it correlates with our mating behaviors.
Okay. Of the Madagascar hissing cockroaches.
So some cockroaches are largely known for their approaching like houses and stuff, and we want to see how that correlates with temperature and natural selection, and how some cockroaches prefer a certain temperature, and if they mate with that certain male or female because of that temperature. Cockroaches are a major threat to public health as they are an aero allergen.
In our inner cities like New York and places that might not have trees, they have these cockroaches and they'll leave their droplets and the dust, which causes major allergies to many people. So far with our results, we have found that the cockroaches in the warmer temperature have been the ones that have mated more or had more attachment, and we've kind of concluded that this could be effect in the winter months when people have their houses warmer, that the cockroaches will want to reproduce more and they'll have more babies. So would you want to keep your house warm in the winter? We've learned how to use the veneer tools in an experiment such as the temperature, the microphones.
Yeah, this is the first time that we've actually conducted a real scientific experiment at Thomas University, so it's been fun and interesting.
My topic was the overgrazing effects on desertification in central Mexico. Basically focusing more on cattle, to be specific. As a measurement, I used soil degradation severity, which basically is a measure of how degraded the soil is in nutrients and things of that nature. So basically what I found was here in these areas of dark red, they are higher density cattle. This is a measurement of head per square kilometer. And then these areas of light orange are the highest soil degradation areas. As you can see, some of these darker areas do have the soil degradation, but down here you can see the white area also has some. As some reference, I also did some precipitation to see, because most people believe rain has to do with desertification. These areas of green and blue are above that line of average desert precipitation, and this orange area is at or below that average. As you can see, some of these areas here are still in the green and the blue. So it's not concrete that cattle overgrazing has an effect on desertification, but it does seem to have some correlation. In the future, I would like to do some more human-based effects like agriculture, over-irrigation, pollution, urbanization, to see if they have any correlation as well. Basically, if cattle is a very big industry, especially in the U.S. We have a lot of cattle, and to feed all that cattle, we have to have enough land to feed them. We have to be able to have land to grow the food to feed them if they don't have enough to eat. It takes a lot of water, which further degrades the soil. So being able to see with maps, like from GIS and stuff, how an increased number of cattle can negatively affect the environment, it might wake people up to the idea that maybe we need to push back a little bit on how much cattle production we have in the U.S.
So my project is STEM obstacles in the collegiate setting, and STEM is science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and it has one of the largest job fields and lots of opportunities for advancement, competitive salaries. Despite that potential, retention is low for STEM fields. Enrollment in STEM majors is low, and a lot of STEM majors actually switch to different majors. Well, I wanted to analyze the major selection process and factors that affect STEM students, so I did this through a online anonymous survey, and each portion was either for non-STEM or STEM undergraduate students. And they consisted of about 17 questions each, and it just kind of gave us information on, factors that affect STEM students, and they're just like the major selection process. Apparently, 52% of non-STEM majors did not know anyone in a STEM career, and I found that very interesting. Maybe it's because they don't know like the diverse possibilities of a STEM career. Maybe they think of them just as doctors or stuff like that. And the main really conclusion that I got from this is that positive peer interaction really fosters the scientific community in STEM students, and is really important for retaining individuals in STEM.
And I noticed that there was a direct geographic location correlation between Kemp's Ridley sea turtles and black coral reefs. So then I did some extra literary review research to try to figure out if there was actually more than just a geographic correlation between the two. I found out that a lot of research has been conducted on Kemp's Ridley sea turtles and black coral reefs, but I was not able to actually find anything more than a geographic location, because it appears that Kemp's Ridley sea turtles like to forage for food like crabs in seagrasses more than anything else, and green sea turtles like to forage in black coral reefs for food. If I'm ever in a position, like we were with COVID, because we couldn't actually go out and do any collecting and we didn't know how to use the technology at the time, if we ever come up and have to do something similar like this in a job where I have to do GIS research for a GIS specialist career, then I can go on ArcGIS online and look up secondary database resources for that. My family and I were going to go on vacation to Helen, Georgia, and maybe while I was up there we could use some of the skills we used in ecology to collect water samples from different rivers and creeks in the area. So I went up there and I conducted a physical and chemical analysis of the rivers and the creeks, and the physical parameters would include things like the plants and the animals surrounding the rivers and creeks, and then I had to bring the water samples back to the school to complete the chemical parameters, which is just telling us whether there's fertilizers in the water and different things like that. And while I was up there, the only chemical test I did have to do was the dissolved oxygen test, because dissolved oxygen dissolves very quickly in standing water. Well, all of the chemical parameters were normal except for dissolved oxygen levels and coliform tests. We found evidence of coliform bacteria in the river, and the dissolved oxygen levels it varied. There was one that was really low, that was around 2 parts per million, and then there was one that was really high, which was 8 parts per million, which is really good, and then the rest averaged around 4. And the different rivers and creeks that I collected at was the Chattahoochee River, the Saki River, Dukes Creek, Smith Creek, and Chickamauga Creek. Okay, so there are plants that grow in the water that are marine plants. So when the sun is out and they absorb the sun's rays, plants release oxygen, which is important for the marine and freshwater fish that live in the water, because they have to use the oxygen for gas diffusion and gas exchange in their systems, even though they breathe underwater. They do need oxygen. Well, there are a couple types of coliform. You have regular coliform that's just washed in, that's in the soil on the riverbanks and the plants. And then you have total coliform, which is a type of fecal coliform that's a intestinal bacteria. It comes from the intestines of mammals like humans, dogs, cats, horses, chickens, things like that, and even the fish in there in the river. So you will find a certain amount of coliform bacteria in there because of the fish excreting their waste in the rivers. But the state of Georgia does have regulated a certain amount. The Chattahoochee River watershed, for example, the Chattahoochee River supplies 70% of the drinking water for metropolitan Atlanta area. So if it's above that level, it's not very healthy for people to drink it because you can get sick and go to the hospital and have to take medication and get better. One of the reasons why it's so important is to keep the rivers and creeks clean for human use, is also for animals, because there are federally endangered species on the endangered species list, like Persina crypta, also known as the Halloween darter. And in the state of Georgia, I believe there's around like 4 populations of that species left, and it's important to preserve the species and not do anything to cause that species to go extinct.